Welcome everyone to 5:29 a.m. on Sunday here in Australia. Hopefully this recording turns out nicely. I'm joined by a beautiful early morning pitter-patter of rain and waking up to some comments from the Dragon Age subreddit responding to the newly released art that I made for the podcast. I am so suddenly enchanted and it just fell into place for me, just how vividly I can imagine myself playing the next Dragon Age, walking around a rain-swept medieval Blade Runner Tevinter. And that's what this episode is called, Medieval Blade Runner. I like to do a lot of mind's eye cinema on my podcasts, and let's go. So presumably we may even start the game from Tevinter, from inside the city walls. Although I will say maybe the arrival into Tevinter might be something quite beautiful in terms of a set piece. There could be a thing where we originate outside of it, just to make it, I guess, maybe a bit more relatable, or let's even dial it all the way back. Because my mind's eye cinema, I like to go into specifics, and I like to go into the real world. Now for me, something that I want to collect for this podcast is stories of where everyone was when they played certain games, because I think a lot of podcasts kind of get caught up with getting onto that train of, how do I grow it with sponsors and blah blah blah, so they kind of follow algorithm-tastic content. All I care about is putting together this chronicle, and what's wonderful is we have all these communities. Obviously Discord's out there, but never really resonated with Discord. Love and light to them. I might end up recording through them again down the line if they just make their experience a little bit more user-friendly and less it's just, I don't know, just all the buttons are so tiny, the text is so tiny. Maybe I'm sounding like showing my age, but regardless, I want it to be a platform for sharing just Dragon Age stories from behind the screen and in front of the screen, so from the creators in the community. So if you are familiar with my work with God of War podcast, speaking with Danielle Basutti, who played Freya, looking forward to speaking with Vance Kovacs and Raf Grassetti, some of the artists who worked on that, and doing the exact same for the Dragon Age community and creators, the artists behind that series, this wonderful series, very kindred to me, which I describe, for those of you maybe joining for the first time, my whole stance on Dragon Age is that it is the be-all, end-all fantasy. It has components of everything Tolkienian, high fantasy aspects. It has George R.R. Martinian darkness, the Grey Wardens very much resonate with the concept of the Night's Watch from Game of Thrones. There's a little sprig of beautiful humor, very similar along the lines of The Princess Bride, and then it has a wonderful party mechanic which evokes, and moving through the story, picking up players and joining your party. It has that from Final Fantasy, so it just feels like, there you go, be all end all. So that's Dragon Age for me. So back to our mind's eye cinema. So for me, in 2014, I have the strongest and fondest memories of living at 25 Childers Street here in Canberra, working, I think I was working literally downstairs of where I was living at Uni Lodge, was studying for my art degree. And 2014, I can imagine it like it was yesterday. So I'm seeing these gameplay trailers coming out for the game, and I'm ordering fucking amazing Domino's pizza and Cha Time, and we had also at the time, it's closed now, but we had a dessert castle, and I had all of my amazing cozy foods there, and I was just playing these beautiful spans of gameplay footage. I think some of it also was narrated, but I definitely enjoyed the no commentary one because I could immerse myself. I was totally swept off with the character because from a design point of view and from a, you know how there's like a character within a work where you're like, oh wow, that sort of represents this fresh new direction that I've never, and I honestly think that Dragon Age 3 felt like a soft reboot in some ways. It's like after Dragon Age 2, which celebrates its 10th anniversary this year, I didn't have as close of a relationship with that title, but I'm looking forward to maybe using the podcast as like a formalized fandom way, is another word that I'd like to, I don't know, maybe if I've coined it, who cares, but of a way where, because I'm doing the podcast, it's going to be a lovely premise for me to reach out to people who are like, dude, you are missing out on Dragon Age 2 and you need to dive into that. Like, so for me to, have a conversation with someone who sort of reveals that game's value, that would be amazing. So for me, Origins is my earliest point of contact. 2011 this would have been. So the second game's in the middle of coming out, but it was just, Dragon Age Origins. Well, I think maybe I covered this on earlier shows, but the true super duper on Origin was 2005, sitting in, I was like 16 or 17 or something. And I swear, I don't know if this is chronologically impossible, but I have such a vivid memory of sort of just, relaxing on my own in the library on my lunch break or during a free period and going to the BioWare website, reading about Jade Empire coming out. And I was obviously diving into Jade Empire. We've got an upcoming Jade Empire podcast in the works, just so you know. And visiting BioWare's site, and I swear I saw Dragon Age's logo of them announcing its development, like we're working our way towards this, and here we go, it's called Dragon Age, and I remember seeing Tim Curry's name. So I don't think sometimes the memory machine is strong enough to like overwrite logic, and sort of preferred and narrated and idealized memories sort of shove their way to replace the real thing. But I think that's pretty solid, pretty objective, my memory of that time. Also was when I first became familiar with Wheel of Time. The books were always there. I haven't actually dove into them fully, but the Wheel of Time books, and there's a Wheel of Time podcast coming up too from us. So, so that's number one exposure. Number two is 2011, where my ex, she was playing it and I dove in. I watched a lot. And when we did resonate for a brief time before, the awful stuff, infidelity on her part and that heaviness there, little mini warning, not a warning, but just advice to young folks or any age folks who are in a relationship where they're not voicing their needs. Make sure to voice your needs. Don't be afraid and eggshell walk, for the sake of keeping things together. It's not going to last. So you need to express your full truth. Otherwise, there's no point. So little mini 6 a.m. lesson, or almost 6 a.m. lesson for advice, just advice for people out there. I have extracted from the heaviness of the relationship stuff, man, sitting on a lovely cozy couch, raining outside, either watching or playing it myself, like Ferelden, Thedas, like fell in love, I've always had this thing though, which I hope they fix finally with the fourth title, just of the jankiness overall of Dragon Age. I see its truth. I see the, my concept of it is like the thing that it was always meant to be. So for me, for example, with Godzilla, 2014, when Gareth Edwards said, is like, well, we're not doing a guy in a suit. We're not doing, our interpretation or whatever. We're just doing the guy. Like we are finding the design truth of this creature that is simply what they saw back then. And it's almost thinking of it as like an evolutionary thing, not even as like a creative thing. It's like, how would this creature actually have existed for then someone to have said, oh, that's so exciting, and then gone back to their workshop in Japan and then started making a suit in impression of this creature. So the OG objective thing. So for me, for Dragon Age, the OG objective truth of it, stripping away some of the janky animations and janky facial animations, Inquisition got close. In fact, that's why I stepped fully into Dragon Age with Inquisition in 2014, studying, getting ready to fully tackle I was only about a year, maybe like 10 months to a year into my art degree, and and I think me and my relationship with creativity, it's a bit interesting. I love my patterns, I love design and layout and fonts and stuff, which is why I do all the podcasts. But I would say overall, some people get more out of uni than others, and for me it was like I just went through the motions really. And so I think I was in a quasi-existential state all throughout my study. And so I was really ripe for connecting with things I just resonated with more. And to this day, I've always been able to see myself at some point, just like my good friend. Well, we haven't spoken in person yet, and he's a kindred, let's say an energetic good friend. Jackdaw, he has responded here and there on Twitter. And then also Gilder Thalen, who I think BioWare should hire. Both of them in some capacity. They're so devoted and dedicated to their craft, coverage of Dragon Age. Maybe hopefully getting them on the podcast can signal boost them in some way. We have about 40,000 subscribers on the main channel, so to just get that into BioWare ears, just to implant that idea, I'd be so happy and proud of both of them. And I really believe that's their destiny, is to, through their work, ascend into just being straight up hired by the place. So, and for me the same, and this actually culminated in, because I was doing a media degree, there was a Dragon Age Inquisition what's it called, the audition competition, and you read some lines and then you submitted it, and then you had a chance of getting into the game. So I really enjoyed that, and I did put out a video there. It was on my channel, and it was like quasi-relevant to my study anyway, because there was the performance aspect to it. And so then I put that out there, and that's somewhere. I'll probably put it on the main channel at some point after this impromptu recording. I'm going to dive into a little bit of admin, maybe like just make sure the YouTube's nice and set up. Every time you add an episode to the feed, not that it's motivated by that, but because I just saw the beautiful rain, and actually literally as I'm speaking to you, to give you a perfect vision. So it's like, as you know, when you wake up at like 5 a.m, everything's like half bathed, or even like 1/3 bathed in light. The world hasn't quite woken up yet. And you know how dogs and cats or whatever, they lean their chins on a windowsill? That's exactly where I am now. I've got my cozy robe, and hopefully, gosh, I really hope that the sound effect of the rain isn't this like unpleasant static for all of you, because it's so cozy for me, and I just wanted to share that with the Chronicle, and share that with you guys as a byproduct for sure. So yeah, now some more specifics in 2014. So I mean, we had this cha time, right? And I had this bubble tea, and I remember even like the sides that I ordered or whatever. I think I've accepted it recently. It's like food is such a huge part of my life. I just love food, and I think the way that I'm going to conquer any kind of, very much like Chris Broad and Abroad in Japan, is like, yeah, it's just, I love food. And he'll go for rides and stuff, and he clearly does a bit of weightlifting, I think, so probably that's going to be my avenue for any kind of health or weight goals, because yeah, I can't do the diet only thing. They even say that it's a mixture of diet and exercise anyway. So, but all right, folks, so ordering this stuff, I got the pizzas in front of me, I'm watching, and I'm noticing immediately from Dragon Age Inquisition, like, they mean it. And I sense right now in 2021, BioWare is in I mean it mode, and 2014's Dragon Age's, Inquisition's reception very much reflects you got Game of the Year, guys, straight up. And it reflects them having taken on feedback from Dragon Age 2, so the blood is good. Some people would argue, they need to prove themselves after Anthem. For me, Anthem, I had, I think, 3 episodes of the main show. There are 3 episodes of the of the Blomkast podcast about Anthem, and I had tabs on that, and Sarah Schachner, which I hope they get her for the music. I would love for a lot of the refugees, and those who had to move from Anthem's production. I hope that they shift towards Dragon Age, so that they can be resettled and find roles within. And when I'm hearing things like everything's being redirected, I echo what Jackdaw and other Dragon Age coverage folks say about how positive that is, I think, ultimately. And look, I so respect attempts. I so respect endeavors to do new things. That's wonderful. However, I think all of us can agree that objectively, Anthem wasn't so much doing totally brand new things. I mean, there was such an ongoing, unspoken elephant in the room allusion and emulation of the Destiny experience. A couple of things where, first of all, I love the digitigrade suits, which digitigrade means the way that dogs and birds have it's like a reverse jointed leg. I thought, that's so distinctive, so interesting. And I even remember roughly when I was in college reading about Dragon Age, I was also, for my writing project and illustration and lifelong storytelling project, The Quantum Myth, I was designing suits weirdly similar to those for this DUKE, the Dukes. That's what the units are called. So dynamic, user, kinetic, echo chambers or exosuits, I think, something like that. And so I was like, oh, cool. So I found that to be an interesting sync up, of vibes, and I followed it. But when it became clear that, as much as there is some, I think, less and less supported narrative, which is important, it's important for this narrative to die, of the narrative of we can just put it out and fix it later. I think the world had gotten fed up with the Fallout 76s, and I know the goodwill of that narrative had been eroded after the triple whammy of Final Fantasy XIV, Fallout 76, and No Man's Sky. Those three copped breaks. They got to experience an ever-withering amount of player patience. And I think Anthem, when they went to that well of, please be patient with us too, we'll fix it with Anthem next, both investors, community, they were like, love and light, but I think this needs to be a teachable moment. And as much as Anthem had some intriguing lore aspects, we still don't know if they're gonna maybe continue it in some other property, but I honestly think just because of the bad blood and the salted earth that we're not going to see any more of Anthem. So that's, and so that, Anthem has, I think someone put it in a headline, Anthem died so that Dragon Age 4 and Mass Effect 5 may live, And that's what we're calling Mass Effect 5. And I love and light to these subtitles, Andromeda and Inquisition. There's nothing wrong with just going 2, 3, 4. Final Fantasy does it. It's really, really successful. And I wouldn't mind it. So if they, and the OCD person in me, really would love something like that, if they just said, look, using the new logos, we're going to release the whole thing remastered, everything's going to be retroactively retitled, and here we go. So Dragon Age 1, Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age 3, Dragon Age 4, and the Dragon Age has just begun historically, so they can go from there. And there's such beautiful possibilities, and again, bringing you back to that mind's eye cinema mode, that daydreaming mode, or early morning dreaming mode. You're on this Griffin, folks. I honestly think we might get Griffins. It might be this beautiful component, an unexpected, unannounced, only revealed once you've played it. Something which, in the age of everyone knowing everything, leaks and everything, it would be such a magical moment in Dragon Age 4 to be, okay, I've spent a couple weeks of, real world weeks just wandering around Tevinter, playing mini games in bars and wandering around, and I just replied to a comment with my proposal for a Deckard Nug Easter egg. So because it is medieval Blade Runner, you just come across, it's just like, it would be so furtive, it would literally, and it would run away or something, I don't know. Or you could come across it like chilling out at a noodle bar, and I want there to be a noodle bar. Frankly, that's again why I'm naming this episode Medieval Blade Runner, is because that is just so fucking unique. Like the magic signs, like a beautiful glowing, just magic used for the purposes of advertising. Like that's so symbolic of maybe, you know, Tevinter's principles eroding with like the idea of using magic too willy-nilly, and so as well as having this aesthetic, you know, very defining and distinctive aesthetic component, which totally gives, just like Godzilla vs. Kong with its neon bathed fights, like it gives I almost said Final Fantasy, it gives Dragon Age 4 this identity, you know, visual identity of like neon soaked goodness. So man, I'm so, and again there's one, like for me, I actually think we've tangentialized a bit to the point where I didn't even mention. So the thing that really got to me was that debut trailer for 2014. You know, which is a sequence of notes which is shared with a beautiful moment in the soundtrack to, I believe it's the Gondor theme, you know, from the Lord of the Rings films, which we also have a Lord of the Rings podcast, and if we have some I don't doubt that we do have some cross-pollination between those two audiences. So as soon as Amazon releases a trailer of some kind, we're going to jump onto that and begin that journey. Continue that journey, rather. You know, I've known and loved Tolkien's world since the 90s, so, and that's me showing my age, but when I heard that trailer, when I heard Trevor Morris's new score, and just taking you through those beautiful, again, I am a sucker for like rain-swept and dew covered, you know, leaves, greenery. I'm such an Enya boy. Yeah, my fiance Ray, she got me a lovely oil lamp, and I just could not stop talking about Enya. I'm like, yeah, in Canberra we had this, you know, as you know, because she grew up in Canberra too, we had this beautiful store called Candlecraft or something, and now it's just Dusk. Dusk is everywhere. And shout out to Dusk, this super seemingly unmeltable, just to use a candle pun, business that is just, you know, something about candles. Like, they're fine during COVID, they've been totally fine. I haven't heard of any Dusk store closings or, you know, shutterings. And to tie it into Dragon Age, oh my god, you better believe I'll be getting some candles set up. I would love to hear. You can send it to dragonagepodcast@gmail.com, or maybe just at me at the podcast. It's much easier in a comment or something. I'd love to read them out. Your plans, even if it's super early on, for how you're going to set up your Dragon Age 4 night. Like, especially after a year of COVID, I don't think I'm the only one who is so looking forward to things normalizing, things coming out. Like, it feels like all of the world, not only the world but maybe history, has been paused, you know, for so long. And so I think there already would have been, and I'm sure there already would have been hype and excitement for Dragon Age 4, especially with when BioWare is in like, this is it, like, our reputation's on the line, we really want to make something special. We've had two pretty high profile, you know, Dragon Age 2 and Andromeda. Think of it as fuel for what we eventually got. You know, Dragon Age 2's failure was what propelled. And I don't want to set the precedent for like, oh, they're a company that is you know, they have to fail in order to want to succeed. It's like, no, I really believe there's going to be some nice energy shifts. I think EA overall is kind of going through a HBO moment where I think they knew they fucked up with Game of Thrones, and then they, as penance almost, they to redouble down on their commitment to quality. They made Chernobyl, which I loved, and so for me Chernobyl is almost like the spiritual apology series for what was done. It was just it's haunting. Like, I use phrases from Chernobyl, like, what is the cost of lies, and like, it's such a powerful metaphor for what happens when you don't talk about things, when you keep the truth buried. And there's even in that beautiful introductory, like, developer focus, which I love, first of all, focusing on developers, these lines about authority, and how one of the themes of Dragon Age 4 is when authority figures don't care about you. And Craig Mazin recently, writer of Chernobyl, who is now writing The Last of Us series with the original creators, Neil Druckmann, and some of the team there, I'm sure. Holly Gross, she has to be consulted because she's a phenomenal writer too. There's a narrative there. He's like, well, it's so weird. I mean, we made this in 2019, not knowing that COVID was going to really unveil this very... it's just so relevant, like this concept of governments thinking they know better than the populace and ignoring the true factors of a disease or of social unrest. Like, that's what COVID unveiled, is like how unstable that is. And I'm already sensing, it's not even a thing of I would love, I hope, but I fully sense and see it in practice, where the experience of the times, and I think art really functions so beautifully this way. I think Tolkien, as much as he pushes against the narrative of his books being as allegory, there's such a thing as subconscious allegory, folks. So there's a beautiful presence of good versus evil in those books, which was so relevant to the times in which they came out. They were reeling from these world wars, because it's almost as though the world didn't catch too much of a break between the world wars, like 1910 and the 1930s and 40s. So that absolutely would have been in the creative ether, and authors who, just like George Lucas, like, he let in that, I guess you could call it just the oxygen of the creative ether sphere. He let that in when he was making Star Wars, where he said, look, I noticed a lot of jadedness out there, and we were making a lot of violent films and stuff. And sometimes, you can make something not even that channels it, but also something that confronts it, maybe re-channels it into something more classical and positive. And that's how he ushered in this positivity with Star Wars. And so I have long said, to anyone who would listen, which I don't know if I've even really spread things out into like my own social group. I think I've even seen some comments on the Dragon Age subreddit, where people are like, I don't have many friends who I can quote unquote Dragon Age with, and so I love this community for that reason. And like Fiancé Love and Light, to her, she I think it's just the central visual processing of games. Like, she just can't hack how and this is like not disparaging at all, it's like she, like, anytime the camera moves in a game, she's like, can't do it, it's just too, like, the camera effect just makes her dizzy. I'm like, that's totally fine. To each their own. And so I have I have a old family friend who's like, she's my Zelda friend, she's cool, and so it's like, I think maybe my only IRL game friend, like dedicated game friend. So all of you now for listening to this are my IRL or IDL in digital life Dragon Age friends. So that makes me stoked to kind of all hype out with you and kind of go on this journey of really seeing. And that's, I think, probably what I wanted to kind of encapsulate with this episode, is that Dragon Age it's getting closer. Oh my god, it is. Next gen, I have such high hopes that boom, we're going to see the version, like the Dragon Age. And I think that battle should never end. People should always continue to strive for their quintessential version of what it is, of who they are. If we want to go into personal development, my fiance does leadership mentoring, coaching, and well, not coaching, but like just mentoring stuff for leaders and stuff. And one of the core things there is like a life is just one long process of continuously finding your most quintessential and true self. And I think Dragon Age 4 is going to be the true time where that will just be an undeniable truth. And facial animations sorted out, motion capture jankiness sorted out, even some components of character design. There is some weirdly impossible wardrobe aspects where I'm like with Flemeth, for example, like her, I guess you could call it horn hair. Like it I just think there's a more, I suppose visually palatable and like real worldifying way to represent that feature of her character design, which is very unique. And I love I really do love the boldness. And I think that's another thing that Dragon Age, it doesn't, it's not afraid to go bold. And I love it's the second time that I've tangentialized. Anyway, the thing that woke me the fuck up to Dragon Age Inquisition was the Iron Bull, was the Qunari, that you could play as a Qunari first and foremost. And I followed that character as like, when I saw him in that trailer, just with his back to it's such a distinctive moment in the trailer. He's rain swept, he turns and you can see, it's like, and I just thought it was a character, but no, that's a quasi-playable, obviously, party character. And so I noticed that. I was like, that's interesting to have this Qunari, like so distinctive, and very distinctive character design. Looks like a Qunari pirate almost. And then that was surpassed in my intrigue by, oh my god, you can play as Qunari. I loved the Qunari. They were intriguing from the first game, and I was fascinated with that culture. I found it interesting. Sten was just, cool, and hearing that like he was the hornless Qunari, so that was really, really beautiful. And so Tevinter's aesthetic is that kind of moment, the concept art that was released yesterday alongside the podcast art that I released. I mean, frankly, folks, I saw that beautiful piece of like medieval Blade Runner concept art. Everything clicked, and I was like, it's time. Let's go. New podcast cover. Now I went with the very beautiful. I was like shuffling through images. I was like, okay, so what would be a nice representative of the podcast, but still using for it to jump out, and because I always think of also as a listener myself, because I listen to a few podcasts too, and I did use as one version. I was like, okay, so what does the neon bathe? I think maybe it's because I didn't find as good of a shot as I wanted. Otherwise, I would have used it for the podcast. But I was like, okay, well, in terms of chronology, imagery-wise, and for recognizability, I guess, because some people might be, because it's still in an unreleased game, this beautiful, guaranteed to be iconic down the line, Tevinter medieval Blade Runner component. I was like, okay, well, there's a beautiful newly released shot of Solas in front of it. Solas is there, but the star of it is that mural. And then I crossfaded that with the beautiful map of Thedas. So, and that's the podcast out there, and did a bit of tweaks of saturation and sharpness and exposure and all that. And I'm more than happy to, if anyone wants to know the font, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but yeah, let me know and I can pass on the font file if you want the one that I found from the site. So yeah, as we're like dolphins, folks. We jump in and jump back out, in and out of the Mind's Eye Cinema. And another thing I'm so looking forward to is, honestly, and this might get some people eye-rolling of the crowd that like, graphics don't matter. For me, they do. They so do. Like, I tried to get into, for example, like Last of Us. Like, I love The Last of Us 2. I'm actually sitting in the exact spot where I played that game inside. There's this window it was raining outside at one point. It's just these memories are created alongside these experiences. I'll never forget like where I was. So please, I'd love to read out as many of those Dragon Age stories as possible. I've listened to one. I think there was Dragon Age abbreviated. I can't remember, but it was interesting for a while. I think they just talked about in-game stuff, and we're going to go into lore. Of course, I'm very lore focused. Even lore and art focused is what I am. Gameplay comes as a tertiary thing. Some people out there maybe have the same relationship, and I love seeing how game devs are responding to that with including these. I love the phrase story mode. It's like, great, let me experience it in my own time without any without any sense of I can already hear the cries of, not a true gamer. I don't care about your definitions and meeting your personal requirements of what a gamer is. For me, this is the interactive art form, and I celebrate it. I support it in my own way, to my own extent, and I don't regularly play games. I got the PS5 waiting there. I dove into installed and looked at Demon Souls, and I just said, you know what, this is beautiful. Glad to have supported them. I'll probably jump in maybe once or twice down the line, but I am on the Elden Ring train, and I'm waiting for that, and I know that that's going to be the one I dive into, And I would say maybe on average, I actually even straight up pick up the controller to play a game about 1 to 2 times a year, if not 1 to maybe at max 3 times for certain titles, so yeah, there's no thing of chugging through, playing, buying all the time for me. And yet, it is the medium with which I'm in love with the most. And I believe holds the most potential for, and this might sound lofty, but I believe it. I've said it all throughout the 5+ years I've been recording for. It'll be the 6th. It's already the 6th, sir. Excuse me. We had our 6th podcast anniversary last episode, actually. Said it all throughout, and I will continue to say it because of humanity's unique to our species component of empathy. So other creatures have empathy, that's true, but I think instinct overrides them. We're talking certain species that hey, I love you, or I feel affection towards you from a maybe evolutionary point of view, but if I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat you, which is like certain bear species is like, if they're hungry, they'll straight up eat their kids, And for us humans, that's completely, at least in most of the world, save for a few pockets in certain forests, maybe probably completely an uncrossable line. And that means we're driven by, we just straight up couldn't do that. From an instinctive point of view, we're empathy driven, and this art form permits and harnesses and channels empathy more than anything, because it's participative, and for it to be what it is, it needs your active input, and that is a one-for-one exactly what the dynamic of empathy is you need to input yourself into another character's shoes. And I believe at their best, games are empathy expanding. That's their number one. Number two is how they are platforms for wider learning, deeper learning about human condition, history, culture, and even authors. Because of the discourse around these games, there's such a beautiful, I think even way more, I see this in the Hidetaka Miyazaki community, such a beautiful emphasis on, collaborative study. We form into classrooms, and we appoint teachers like VaatiVidya, for example, and Jackdaw, who is for all intents and purposes, alongside Gil, they are collectively the Vaati of Dragon Age, So it just encourages such beautiful, worthwhile, paths of development, self-learning, and that's why I'm sure I'm making so many fucking young people roll their fucking eyes and be like, bruh, it's just Fortnite, stop pedestalizing it as this art form or whatever, blah blah blah. And love and light to you, I let you do your thing. I even have booked aside, in case I ever feel like talking about it, the Fortnite podcast. It's out there. because I am becoming a little bit more intrigued. Used to be very anti games like that. But the synthesis of pop culture, that's what perked my ears. That was my, I guess we can call them Iron Bull moments, or medieval Blade Runner moments, where it's like, oh, suddenly my intrigue of your subject matter has crystallized and it is led by this thing, and now I will act on that. So seeing Sigourney Weaver, and Master Chief and all these, just all sharing, it's almost like a Roger Rabbit situation, which I find so intriguing. So yeah, and I've mellowed out over time, getting less barbed about things and less defensive, and it's, people have their own thoughts about things, and that's totally fine. So, but if you do resonate with that angle on Dragon Age that I have, and it's just the only angle I can have is lore, number one. Number two is the art, the art team. Stunning. The behind the scenes after that, just all the programmers, level designers, like that's my third. Yeah, I know I said gameplay third, but I think that supplants third, and then maybe gameplay fourth or fifth, honestly. I think promotional activities, like, that's even more intriguing to me than the game, the interactive component. That's the key, and I would say like almost like as an observer, scholar, I guess, whatever, I guess that fits, because I am on the outside of it for the most part. I don't play them as much, I don't platinum or whatever, so I'm cheering on, and I'm signal boosting, but like with Beyond Good and Evils, which we do a show for, man, I'm going to be all over the lore and art of that. But as for this thing, which it looks to be like a No Man's Sky-esque giant experience, but I might even interrupt myself there, because guess what? If these things like just to give this example of The Last of Us, which I didn't complete that thought either. It's my tangent-tastic jumping around. It's just, I've given up. That's just who I am. I was playing the original, and I was just like, oh man, like I just know that this beautiful, like, straight up photoreal experience is coming. And I got to about maybe 2/10 the way through The Last of Us, the 2013 remastered. I was like, okay, well, I'm good. I'll just rewatch. I don't know. Just knowing that I love photoreal, man. On the Monsterverse side, I am constantly championing for a Monsterverse fighting game that just uses the assets from the films, and short of like word for word verbatim saying this, Ubisoft creating the Avatar project, they're gonna be using the assets from the film in this. We haven't seen the true awakening of next gen, folks. That's why I'm putting on the Instagram 2023 for this title, Dragon Age, the next Dragon Age 4, whatever they end up calling it, because I really want them to polish this one. And we are here for you. Like, we are here for the road to 2023. Don't rush this thing out. Make it the best it can be. And let me have those moments, which I had throughout The Last of Us Part 2 of, what? And I would look right up close to the screen, and it's like, I have to like strain my eyes so much to even see a pixel, and how did they even achieve this lighting effect? And so I think the visual artistry is huge for me, This might sound brutal, but I'll maybe dive into retro games exclusively in the YouTube context, and like I'll enjoy watching some old, Legacy of Kain, like janky PlayStation 1 stuff, maybe. But I don't know, maybe it's my thing of I can't really do the retro thing too much. I love to be forward-facing. And what's interesting is that we are close to, if not maybe already reaching it with like the likes of Horizon, Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West, reaching the point of no return of like, okay, it's just photoreal now, folks. Sure, The Pathless, which was my spiritual game of the year last year, The Last of Us Part 2 was my nominated game of the year because it was the only one actually nominated out there. I think The Pathless really deserved nomination, but it didn't. So my true at my heart, and it's tied into my Quantum Myth endeavor, because The Pathless had so many lovely moments, teaching moments for me as I developed that. So I love, like, say if they did like a pocket Dragon Age, I'd still check it out. Maybe look at a YouTube no commentary playthrough of it if they wanted to do like a stylized Dragon Age experience. And I've watched a lot of Gary Whitta's talk show, set Animal Talking, I think it's called. And yeah, I can hack. And Zelda, I mean, I don't want to be a hypocrite. Like, Zelda has my heart as my number one from a formative point of view, second to Final Fantasy in terms of just the earliest impact that these titles have had. And they Final Fantasy, Zelda, probably more suited to the example I'm giving, gets a free pass for that. Like, so I'm not alienated, and I won't pretentiousify myself out of the discourse of games that aren't all completely photoreal. But there is no doubt, like with Forspoken, which we now have, the Forspoken podcast, that's a photoreal fantasy experience which looks so fluid and beautiful. And it is, honestly, even if I may even have in the past have said, this is it, we've reached it. I think with Horizon I said that. I genuinely hope and manifest for Dragon Age 4 to be that game that we say we've reached it. It's photoreal. It's amazing. When I'm standing in front of this Tevinter merchant and I see the rain, this like the sodden mud around them, like, and I'm manifesting this too for Hogwarts Legacy. Like, let the next generation fully awaken with the likes of Dragon Age, 4 and Hogwarts Legacy, and Forspoken, and even Pragmata, I think, is another one where it just looks photorealistic, and that's my inlet, as I've said, my inlet into this subject matter, this medium. Photorealistic, empathy generating artistry, for sure. So I'll leave you with a little vignette of Tevinter. So nothing would make me happier than, all right, we're mid-game, or maybe 3/4 of the way through this title. We're in that thing where it's like, okay, maybe a couple of extra chapters and then I'm done. And you're just in that blissful, like, world exploring mode, just finishing all this tiny sub-quests, side quests. And I am flying at night right now with you all. Patter patter, just like how you're in the Batman Arkham titles, you can hear the sort of flapping of your sort of bat wing cowl, in the rain, and the rain hitting it. It's all there happening. And it's this griffin that I have this sense. I think I sensed this for Fable too. We have a Fable podcast, so shout out to Lice and or Liz, LYS, and Kelly from the Fable podcast. I want to see mounts, man. I want to see flying mounts, and that would be a perfect time to introduce them so that you're not making things too easy. Again, 3/4 of the way through a title, that's when to bring in, Final Fantasy has communicated this, that's when to bring in the go anywhere flying mount, the Metroidvania flying mount, where it's like this first area, because of this unscalable locale. I hope they funnel that aspect from Anthem into this, because that's my daydream. I've jumped through all 261 now. This is the 261st episode of the main show, and it'll be the 5th episode of the Dragon Age podcast. I think I've mentioned it probably in every episode. It's like, I want to be heading back home to Tevinter in the dead of night with my little lantern. I am talking so from Warcraft. We have a Warcraft podcast too. There's a scene of I think it's Ben, can't remember the character's name, but he's the sorcerer, and he's played by Ben Foster, and he's flying at night across Azeroth with his griffin. And take that visual, add Rainswept, visuals there. It's maybe, let's tie things back to the time of recording of this episode, maybe like 5 a.m. Maybe we have a little clock, Majora's Mask style, that tells us, hey, this is what time it is, and it's beautifully photoreal. and maybe lore entries can be read out like Metal Gear Solid 5 tapes. You can even be listening to yourself reading these lore entries so that you don't have to go into another screen. I'd love that. And it's just your character in their voice just reading. And it's just, you can hear maybe a very subtle audio effect applied to your mental voice. I mean, a lot of what Aloy says in Final Fantasy, man, it's like, it's a testament to me always like misspeaking it at first because I get so excited. As I said, Final Fantasy is one of my top 2. I think it jostles for position with Zelda as my top, and it's not unconscious, these Freudian slips or whatever. It's like Dragon Age has so much potential to be right up there in my pantheon because of this be-all end-all quality. So there you go. So yeah, beautiful griffin wings. You can see like the moonlight hitting the griffin wings, and then you can see the rain sort of pouring off out onto them. And you've obviously been able to raise your griffin from a chicklet maybe, or an adolescent chicklet, as part of a quest of some kind. You have a connection with this creature. You can like a normal mount, you can just sort of go like on the ground, but this, maybe you've worked yourself up to a point where you now have the like infinite flap ability or whatever, and you can just fly. You're just flying from, Ferelden to Tevinter maybe even, and you're just on this giant flight listening to these audio logs, narrated, spoken, whatever deft way they have of saying, okay, yeah, this is just you reading this book. And why wouldn't you? You have a little lantern up there in the sky, maybe a spell to protect you from the wind or whatever. Who knows how big this creature might be? It might even have like its own little canopy or whatever. And you got your little lantern and you're reading this book up in the sky, thousands of feet up in the sky. And it's quiet because just like on a plane, it's a still night. There's a little bit of rain. You got your lantern, you got your little anti-rain kind of spell or covering of some kind, and you're just cozily reading this book by lantern light. Griffin back, raining outside, 5-6 a.m., about to touch back down into Tevinter, and you have not just to Tevinter, but you have your own house in Tevinter, just like with the Elder Scrolls. We have an Elder Scrolls podcast, which will fully awaken when the 6th title, comes to us. 2023, I think that they're going to be the same batch of months, same, like maybe in the same span of a few months, is when I see these, fantasy titans, RPG, behemoths, months apart. That's how I envision it, but that's just that in the real world. But back to our, in closing vignette to kind of tee things off. And I'm so grateful to the rain here in Canberra for accompanying me through this whole recording. Thank you, rain friend. So yeah, we have a settlement, or not a settlement, like a loft of some kind, where similar to here's just a visual, with Crimes of Grindelwald. They have a launching platform for those thestral carriages, and we have our own, where this loft up connected to our sort of stable. It's like a stable that connects into our I guess you would call it a I'm blanking on the word, but just penthouse, like our own Tevinter workshop slash apartment slash penthouse, this beautiful abode. It's like, oh, there you go, that'll just be here's your Tevinter abode. And it's, instead of some big castle or keep or anything, it's just this lovely 2-3 story with a basement or whatever loft that you've this abode that you've been able to purchase with funds from your escapades, quests and such. And yeah, you sort of flap land, and then you give your griffin like a lovely, or a bat-winged mount of some kind, maybe we can choose. Give her some treats and like lovely carrots or whatever they eat, and off comes the rain-swept coat or whatever, and you're in your chilled out, beautiful Tevinter apartment, and it's raining outside, and you got your fireplace, and you go to your map and you say, okay, well, that's a beautiful newly added quest I can go to in that region, and I'll Kayela, let's call her that, this beautiful griffin. I love to name creatures, and in games that's what I had fun with Breath of the Wild, coming up with new names for these animal companions. So cool. I'm actually writing a book. It's called Steed, the archetypical companion steed, like mount in fantasy and myth. So that's probably why I feel like this guy, he really likes this kind of archetype of the Falcor, of the Toriko or the Trico from Last Guardian, which we also do an Ueda show. So that explains that. The Fathiers from Last Jedi, I have questions, I have qualms with that film, but something I loved with these Fathiers, and I love the Tauntauns, and I am really manifesting for the Ubisoft Star Wars title to be, hey, look, Tauntaun adventure simulator, like just go out, like less fighting, like just hitch up one of these fantasy mounts, go explore, and that's what my style will be if it will. I'm manifesting that Dragon Age 4 will permit such a play style where I can just be an explorer, a Griffinback explorer, and like an fighting only as a last resort, exploring Thedas, going to cozy little islands. And that's what I enjoyed from The Witcher. We do a Witcher podcast, it's true. Pretty much any subject I bring up, we do a dedicated podcast for. So, and that's just me. It's like I love these little repositories and chopping up the main show into these subject matter specific feeds, so that you only have to really hear from me about a certain subject matter if that's all you want. So, or you can tune into the main show, the Albert Kessler podcast, which is everything all at once, or rather, everything all in one place. But yeah, The Witcher 3 had these beautiful like little islands you could swim to, and it's like, oh, what's there? And that's one thing that I saw a spark of it in Anthem, is flying into these tiny little eyries. Man, I would be the eyrie hopper, like, okay, where are these high up places I just could not get anywhere else without my trusty griffin friend, And I remember from Origins, the Mabari, like that loyalty, that component of your party. So I would love for there to be a connection, that way, a full-blown like Kimari, with the quadruped. So if it's a speaking griffin, hell yeah, bring it on, King of Red Lions from Wind Waker. Happy for it to have that ability to speak. I love Temeraire. We do a Temeraire podcast, and the idea of the mount speaking with you, that's cool. I mean, I'm happy with either, totally. And it's like maybe a super special rare griffin. It's like, oh yeah, like that may be relevant to their reason for still being around after the supposed griffin extinction. I just think I am so heavily manifesting to have flying mounts and griffins in Dragon Age 4. So flying around overhead, just like looking down, panning the camera down, seeing this medieval Blade Runner setting, like going about its life, and I'm just flapping overhead and off to explore some new undiscovered region, like setting out completely. That's what people have a huge fondness for, is, what, today I'm just going exploring and I'll find what I'll find. And that's maybe what I'll leave you with, folks, is let it be so that in a few years' time we can all sort of hype out together, get excited together for these amazing adventures we will each and together collectively experience, individually and as this beautiful, beautiful community, experience these wonderful new journeys in the world of Dragon Age. So, but folks, it has been so lovely speaking with you all in this lovely rain-swept morning, which is still nice and dark. We're talking 6:28 a.m. here in Canberra, coming up to the 59 minute mark now. So if you were interested in any of the subject matters I dropped here, there's dedicated feeds to all of them. We just released an episode of the Avatar podcast with John Rochelle. He designed the font for the new titles, and there's that whole SNL thing with Ryan Gosling. So then we talk about that too. So down the line, getting to speak with, who designed the font and did some layout work for Dragon Age 4, where I want them on Zoom. These unsung, unsignal boosted, figures in these teams. I want to, sing their praises, and signal boost them for sure. So, so that's going to be the show. And it was wonderful meeting you all. And here's to maybe receiving some of your stories and reading them out on the next show. And if you would love to join the show, let me know on Instagram. So Dragon Age Podcast. All right, folks. Until next time. Bye for now.